in your schematic, if you have placed a different key negotiation point in the right place, you will have seen that the key negotiation point lie on a straight line defined at both ends by the reservation point set by the seller and the buyer. This distance between the buyer's and the seller's limit is called the zone of possible agreement, or ZOPA. It is in this ZOPA area that bargaining will occur. Generally, this zone of possible agreement is positive, as it should be in the figure that you drew. A positive ZOPA means that the seller's limit or reservation point is lower than the buyer's limit or reservation point. In other words, when the ZOPA is positive, the lowest price at which the seller is willing to let go the item is lower than the highest price the buyer is willing to pay to acquire it. In this case, an agreement is indeed possible. There is a zone of overlapping prices between the seller and the buyer. This is shown in gray in the diagram here. Sometimes, however, the zone of possible agreement is negative. That is, the seller's limit is higher than the buyer's limit. Or to put it differently, the lowest price at which the seller is prepared to let the property go is higher than the highest price the buyer is prepared to pay. In this case, no agreement is possible. Indeed, we said that negotiators should always refuse any deal that goes beyond their limits. This negative ZOPA is illustrated in the picture here. We see that both negotiators have set their limits at the level of their alternatives. No agreement between the parties is possible because Chris will refuse to pay more than $8,500 for the car, while John will not let it go below $9,000 anyway. One of the problems with a negative ZOPA is that, apart from the fact that no agreement between the parties is possible, the negotiators are often faced with uncertainty about the ZOPA when they start negotiating. Indeed, at the beginning of the discussions, the parties do not communicate their respective limits to each other. Not knowing the limits of their counterpart, they are therefore unable to know whether they are working in a system with a positive structure and where an agreement is in fact possible, or whether they are working in a system with a negative ZOPA in which de facto is doomed to failure. This problem of lack of information about mutual boundaries can be particularly frustrating if the parties spend a lot of time and energy negotiating and discussing, only to realize that structurally their respective limits have been incompatible and that no effective agreement has been ever possible.